Motivate
Motivation.
you.
You're live. Hi, I'm Katie Harris, owner and CEO of Nursepreneurs.
Hi,
And
I'm
here,
Jill Weberding. I am CEO and founder of Nurse Assure.
so Jill, today we're talking about the myth of motivation. So tell
Yes.
us a little bit about what that is. I have my own issues with motivation, but
Yeah.
tell me
So
what you think.
I think the big myth of motivation in a business is that you only work on your business when you're motivated and inspired to do it. And the thing is like you're waiting for this big, whether it's inspiration or like, oh, I just, I know what I need to do. I'm just not doing it. I'm just not motivated. I'd rather watch Netflix tonight, or I've got to do XYZ. You prioritize all these other things and your business ends up coming last. And so you're where you are right now is a direct reflection of, your habits and where you're prioritizing your business. So if you're waiting for motivation, you're waiting for the wrong thing. Is my point. Like you can't, if you only work on your business when you're motivated, you'll never have a business come to fruition. So that's kind of like the myth, I think, from the nurses that I've talked to is like, yeah, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, no, I had the same problem with when I first started my podcast. I would do it when I was motivated or things came easily for me. Somebody would say, "Hey, we should do a podcast episode sometime," and I say, "Hey, that sounds like a good idea." And then, like a month later, maybe we would get to it or something. But so things weren't going out consistently, and it was something that somebody had said to me one time about being professional versus being amateur, and that was it. And it kind of hurt to hear something like that because I was just like, oh, well, I don't have any guests this week, so I guess I can't do my podcast. And it's like, no, that's irresponsible. You have to go out and get the podcast
Right.
guest and bring them on, and not, even if you don't feel like doing it, you still have to do it. Like it's not an option.
Yeah. So I think that surprisingly holds a huge number of people back. And I've seeing this kind of over and over again. Like we know the things that we need to do, so I'm like, so why are you not doing them? Well, like it's just hard because I'm working two jobs or I'm working this, and I'm like, well, how about you get this going and then you can leave those two jobs, or you can leave only work one of those jobs. It's like they're waiting for this big internal, push, and that's not how you get to where you want to go. That's really about creating the habits, that you just have to consistently show up to do. And it just has nothing to do with motivation whatsoever.
Yeah. And I had that one time. So I was going to take this course with John Morrow, and John Morrow is like the king of blogging. The guy's amazing. And there's always that thing like, oh, become a blogger, make $1 million, or whatever, that whole kind of spiel again. And it just seems easier, like, oh yeah, I'll just write some stuff that I know about, and then I'll get. And he, in one of his calls, actually it was like the first, I'd signed up for his membership, and then I get into the first video, and he laid it out, and he was harsh. He was like, look, this is not something that you do when you feel like it. It's not. It's like, I'm up every morning from 5 to 8, and I lock myself in a closet. Whether I feel like writing or not writing, I'm going to write. And if you're not going to do that, then you should leave immediately. Because he's like, I don't want, just amateur bloggers in my program. And I was like, ouch. And I did actually leave the course because I'm like, you know what, he's right. Like, this isn't what I want to do. And, I mean, I think it's a hard lesson. And it's the same thing with starting a business. Like a lot of nurses that start a business don't really want to start a business. They just want more money to do the things that they really want to do. So and we've talked about that angle before. So it's really about being clear about what you want. But at the same time, like motivation isn't going to run your business. And motivation is one of those things that's fleeting. Like if you go to, uh, what is a Tony Robbins thing, the destiny, dream with the destiny, or live your destiny, whatever his destination thing is. People get super revved up from doing something like that, going, and they're like, yeah, I'm so motivated, I'm going to change my life. And then they go home and they lose all that motivation, and you can't afford Tony in your house like 24/7 motivating you, right? Like, it's just not going to happen. Oh, Jill, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Okay.
There,
Can you hear me
yeah.
now? Yeah. Like that's the big myth is that you should like entrepreneurs who are really successful is that they're just like these super motivated, individuals who have this big passion and this big desire. And if you're not feeling it, then maybe it's not right. And so you even slack off more. That's the myth. It's not about motivation. It's about consistency and creating the habits and showing up. And so like I think everybody's heard about like Jerry Seinfeld, his advice on how do you get to your level, like how do you get really good, how do you be this internationally known comedian who's hilarious, and he goes, oh yeah, that's easy, I just write jokes every day, and they're like, he's like, that's never what anybody wants to hear. But that's the truth. Like, you just have to say, this is what I want to do. And so, what is the activity that's actually going to get me to where I want to go? And then, once you got clear on what your goal and vision is, then not that you really forget about it, but you put it over here to the side. And now you should be totally focused on what are the small, consistent things, habits that I need to create and activities I need to do daily to get me from here to here. Like, that's it. Like, just set your goal, be really, clear on your vision, what you want. And then you got to figure out what are the activities that are going to get me there. And he literally says that he has a calendar on his wall and with like, I think it's a year calendar. And he said, every day that I wrote jokes, I X'd off the box. And then the next day, I did the same thing. And after a week or so, like, you have this nice little chain of X's. And guess what? You don't want to break it. Like, that's the motivation. The motivation actually comes after you start making progress, right? When you get these little small wins, you feel like you're getting somewhere. It comes after the progress. It's not, the myth of I need to be motivated first and then I'll do activity and I'll make progress. No, that's completely backwards. You have to do the activity, make the little progress, and then it motivates you to keep going, because you don't want to, you don't want to break the chain of X's if you show up every day.
Yeah, Eileen just said in the comments that the same thing happens with a lot of her clients, and it happens a lot, I think, in coaching as well. Because after you get off the phone with your coach, you're like, "Oh, I'm so motivated." And I did this with my coach. I can't say that never do it again. I certainly still do it. I'll slack off or I get unmotivated or whatever, and it's just part of the thing. But the difference is doing it whether you want to or not. And one of the things that I learned early on was, so I used to make a list, and I would have a list of things that was like a mile long to do, and they were really big things too, like
Mm.
write a book, or write an article. Yeah, like I'm going to do that in one sitting, right?
Yeah,
And then I learned that first of all, having a list of 500 things to do in one day is just not practical. It's just dumb, and you're not going to get to everything.
it doesn't
So
serve you.
yeah, so then I had to break it down and say, okay, what can I realistically get done in a day? And then, really break it down. So now all of a sudden, instead of having 100 things to do, I have to space it out. And then it physically, like, I can see whether this stuff can get done or not. And that, I think, is a good way to get motivated as well, because you have these little wins, and that's what your brain wants. It wants like little wins. So if I can cross off, sign up for whatever software, so that
Mm-hmm.
I can do the next step tomorrow, which is make an email sequence with
Right.
3 emails or something, which can lead me to the next thing, which, ultimately it's to, have the sales funnel in place, right? But so having the end goal and then breaking it down into daily goals that you can actually get done, and the task should take you less than an hour to do. And then my trick is to keep it under 5.
Yes.
So I don't want to have more than 5 hours worth of stuff to do, because I know it's not going to get done.
It always takes longer,
Yeah, and it always takes longer.
or you get interrupted, or whatever it is. But yes.
Right. Right. And then stuff has to go on your calendar for the next day, and then that bumps something off your list. But then you can see too, because like when I had all these things to do, I'm like, oh, I'll do them all on Tuesday. Well, there weren't
Yeah.
enough hours in the day on Tuesday to get all my stuff done, and because I hadn't broken it down. And then it was just kind of like, I literally I was going to write an article. Write an article was on my list for 4 years. It never. I
No.
finally just, I let it go. I was like, I'm not writing this article. So it's just not
But
going to happen.
In contrast, so that's a great example, okay, of if your goal is write an article or write a book. For many people, you can't have on your to-do list write a book, okay? You need to say my goal is to write a book and I want it done in 90 days, and so I'm going to write 1,500 words a day. It doesn't matter if they're Shakespeare, it doesn't matter if they're garbage. I'm writing 1,500 words every single day, and that's going to get me to my goal. So you're exactly right. You got to break it down, set your goal. This is what I want and when I want to accomplish it. And then you work your way backwards and you break it down to those daily, or is this once a week I work on? Is this is this a daily thing that I do every day to get to my task? But when it's small, it feels achievable, right?
Hmm.
And that's the trick of your 5 things. That's kind of the magic number. I would do no more than 5 either on your daily task list, because you can actually achieve it, and then you make those little increments of small progress, and you can build on that each day, and so
Yeah.
it doesn't keep bumping your list down the road, down the road, down the road.
Right. And if you think about, 5 hours a day, I mean, that's a lot of time to put to your business as well. So it might not be 5 items on especially if you're doing a 12-hour shift.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming home from a 12-hour shift and doing 5 hours of work on their business.
No.
It's just not happening. I don't care if you're single, you're not single, you go to
No.
bed at 2 in the morning. It's just
No.
you're wiped
Not
out.
productive.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe you can get one thing done after a 12-hour shift, maybe. So you have to plan that as a nurse. So,
Hmm.
just things to think about. And the other thing I would say is that I would really schedule things in 12-week blocks,
Yes.
because you can get way more done in 12 weeks than if you give yourself a year. Because if you give yourself a year, it's always going to be like, oh, I'll just do it next month and next month and
Yep.
next month. And then month 12 comes up and it was
Never happened.
just, yeah, it'll
Yeah.
never happen.
Yeah. And Eileen just made that comment too. Open up your planner on Sunday, and, you just have a while where you plan, you plan in increments, and those, I refer to those kinds of those, those 90-day sprints. And I break it down into that, from this is my year goal. Okay. I'm going to break this down into 90-day sprints. And what does that look like? And then you just keep working your way back until you get to this month here, and I put it all out. So I know each day what I'm focused on, the activities that are actually going to move the needle and get me towards my goal. Because
Right.
otherwise you get sucked into this busyness mode,
Hmm.
or you're working on the things that you want to work on that are easy and fun, creating graphics, doing social media posting, and none of that is actually moving the needle. Depending on what your business is, but you tend to go to, especially when you're not motivated, you go to the things that are easy and the things that you like to do,
Right.
that you're willing to do, but it's not usually the consistent
Right.
effort, that's going to produce the results.
Right. But that's why it's also helpful to break things down into blocks, because
Yeah.
you'll get much more done if you do, chip away at it a little bit at a time, as opposed to write a book, like write the intro to the book,
Hmm.
draft out the headings of the book, maybe write the intro paragraph or scaffold the chapter, or format the book. I mean, that might take a little while. That might be task 1 and 2,
Yeah.
but that kind of stuff that really helps to really, really break it down and be honest with yourself. Because if one of the things that I have done for a long time is schedule these tasks. So because I have a scheduling app and people are always scheduling time on my phone. So, I might be like, oh, I'm going to do all this stuff on Tuesday. And then the next thing I know, I've got 5 calls on Tuesday and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So I actually scheduled those tasks on my phone. So then I know that task has to get done that hour, and I'm not taking a call, and I'm not checking my email, and I'm not going to,
Mhm.
go to lunch with, whomever down the street. Well, you're not going to do that anyway these days, but uh, yeah,
But
but
yeah, your point is distraction free, right?
yeah,
You're protecting that time. And that's the thing. When you don't schedule it and you don't plan for it and block off that time and make it like it's a meeting, you're basically creating a meeting with yourself to get this task done. 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, however you're spacing it out. But you have to protect that time and be dedicated. Okay, it's 1 o'clock. And now, or it's 2 o'clock, I'm doing InnerGame, and I'm not going to schedule anything else when I have this time blocked off. Right.
right,
Um, because otherwise you'll end up at the end of the day and go, oh, I only got like one of my 5 things done. Well, that's because you checked your email and you did get distracted and you didn't have that protected time scheduled out.
Yeah, and that's it's really that is the key is just
Mhm.
because then you can visually see it. You can
Right.
map out like, look, I have like 3 free hours on Tuesday, and I do want to eat lunch with Jane down the street. So and that'll probably go 90 minutes, if not 2 hours. So now I only actually have 1 or 2 hours when I thought I had 12 hours on Tuesday to get all these
Yeah.
things done. So when you do start scheduling things, all of a sudden you realize how much time you don't have, and how precious your time is. So, like you said earlier, it's really addicting to just throw Netflix on at night. But maybe instead of watching Netflix, you can get that 1 hour of work done for your business.
Yeah. And when
That's
you, I
hard though.
mean, I mean, I get it. And sometimes, yes, you need to just like
You need the time.
decompress, and that's okay. But if you're doing that every night, you're essentially showing up for Netflix every night, and that's not going to move your business, right? So it's just about getting clear on what your priorities are. And you're right. I've worked with lots of people who they thought they wanted to start a business, and when it really came down to it, they just hated the job that they were in. They hated the hours, they hated the environment, whatever it was. They were like, they were burnt out. And I'm like, you're not burnt out. You're misaligned. You're not in the right place anymore. And so you're not a tree, in the, famous words of Jim Rome, move, like move to a different role that is in better alignment with what you want in life. So if that's you, you don't have to go through all this, trying to figure out what do I want to create. Business may not be what you're trying to do. But that's where the clarity comes. And once you get the clarity in the beginning, now you can really chunk it down. And when you make those little bits of progress, that's when motivation hits you, right? Because
Yeah.
you're marking off all the X's and you don't want to change. So if you are the person who right now is like functioning based on motivation, I highly recommend that you get a paper calendar or a dry erase board calendar, whatever, hang it up in your office or wherever it is that you do your work, and you literally mark off the day every day that you show up and work on your business. If that's truly what your goal is, then you got to track it, right?
Yeah. And we see this a lot too, with the websites that we design. Like we'll get nurses that are, they want their website done, and then they kind of disappear, and they have we don't have any communication with them, and they're not getting back to us, or they're not doing the kind of their copywriting and all that kind of stuff, and it's very hard to get all of that stuff done, and we have that same kind of block scheduler where we can only do a certain amount of stuff, but
Yep.
it's kind of the same concept. Like they didn't realize, like they thought they had all this time in the world to get the website done, and then when it came down to it, they were either, like I said, run down from work, had too
Yep.
much going on, didn't account for the kids and the dogs and the grandparents and all these other people that were going to need things from them. And you just have to recognize that you might have, especially if you're working 1 or 2 jobs and you have family that you're taking care of, you might have 1 or 2 hours a day to work on your
Max.
business, max. And then it's very difficult to set up a business in 6 weeks. And we certainly have had people ask us if they could set their business up in 6 weeks, and I'm like, yeah, sure, you can do it, but the
You need to be
likelihood of that
committed.
happening is very, very low unless you have a ton of free time and dedication to getting it done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're chipping away at it. But the other thing that I would say too is, um, the when you're looking at putting this business together, it's not what you're doing right now isn't going to be your life forever. It's like,
Yeah.
let's put the business together, and then your life is going to change, because once the
Right.
business is put together, it's like that's a one and done thing. Like once the business model is there, it's not like you redo the business model every month. It's done. So once that's done, then maybe you do have time to watch Netflix at night, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you do have time to relax. But there's a period where you have to get this piece done, and your life might be a little bit more hectic, but it's not forever. It's just for now, and
Yeah.
then your life changes, and you start focusing on marketing, and then it's a whole other realm of business that you get into.
Yeah. But you have to, again, I think that's, that's key. That's really helpful though when you're able to map that out in those 90-day, like you talk about, breaking things down into 90 days, and then you break them down further yet. When you say this is my goal to have a business up in 6 months, then you work your way backwards. And if you know that that's going to happen, it also is the light at the end of the tunnel. Like you can see it's not always going to be, I'm not going to always have to put in, maybe this to be doing this specific task. If it's something that you don't like to do, if it's the email sequence, or the sales funnel, you only have to set that up, the structure of it one time, right? But, the idea of creating a sales funnel on your to-do list is something that's going to stay there for months and months because it's overwhelming, right? Especially if you're not used to doing that. That's not really in your wheelhouse. That could sit on your task list for months versus sign up for your email service provider on this day. And the next day, like you said, create a welcome email sequence. And then the next day, do this piece. And you'll reach your goal, but you've got to track it. And as you're making those increments, Eileen said, that's it. You celebrate the small wins. And ta-da, there comes the motivation, right? To keep going, because you're celebrating that and you can finally see that you're actually making progress and making headway. That's where motivation comes into play.
Absolutely. And like I said, that was something that I didn't realize. I didn't realize, like, I just thought people, because they always talk about follow your passion and do what you love and stuff. So it feels like you should love what you're doing every moment of the day. And it's just, that's not the case.
That's a highlight reel, right? Like that's the stuff that, we see on commercials and they're like, oh, I love what I do. And you need to be passionate about it, but you also have to realize there are some things that you just have to do. And you're not going to be passionate about every nitty gritty detail. You're passionate about the goal. You're passionate about what you're trying to accomplish. And, the service that you're going to provide or the help, the impact that you're going to make. You're not necessarily passionate about, writing, 1,200 words today, but you are really passionate about getting your book out in the world because it's going to make an impact and change people's lives. So you got to do the 1,200 words every day to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I think that's a really great lesson for everybody. And it's something that we all have to take home and just be professional about, because it's tough, because you have a lot of competing interest, and when you first start out a business, it doesn't feel like you're ever going to catch up to the person at the next level that's seems to be doing so well, and like you go through those slumps, mindset slumps of like, why should I bother? What's the point? I'm never going to get there. It's too slow. But and we've said this before, but we all started at square zero or square one or whatever the saying is. And it is hard and it's daunting and it's scary, but it's where everything starts. It's worth it.
Yeah. So, and that's that, I've seen that in the courses that, with the groups that I'm teaching too, we get in that comparison game, and that is really can suck your motivation away when you compare your beginning to someone else's middle or someone else's end, whether that's somebody that you're, aspiring to, or that you really, look up to and admire. You're not comparing your beginning to their beginning. You're now comparing your beginning to their end, or what, maybe their peak or even their middle. It can feel like, well, why am I not as far as this person? I've seen that within my courses, and it's not this, you're not on the same path. You're not on the same journey. Maybe that person only works part-time, and so they have a whole lot more time to dedicate to their business right now than what you do. But it doesn't matter, because they're not going where you're trying to go. So, keep your eyes on your own paper. Like, stay focused on
it's the one time like cheating doesn't help, because it just will demotivate you.
Keep your eyes on your own paper.
No, it's a good advice.
Just set your goal, be really passionate about the goal that you're setting, and set it with clarity and intention. And then just show up every day, figure out what it is, the activities that are going to get me there, chunk them down, put them on your calendar, protect your time. So those, no more than 5 a day, and you will check them off and make incremental progress. And that will get you to those goals, often maybe faster than you even planned, right? When you do it in that way. You always, what do you always say, Katie? It's like you always underestimate what you can accomplish in a year, but you overestimate what you can accomplish in a day, right? It's like did I say that
I
backwards?
think it's the opposite.
You
You
under
overestimate what you can get done in a year because you'll say, I can do a book, I'm going to do this movie,
oh,
I'm going to
okay.
get this, I'm going to do that. But you can actually get way more done in 12 weeks than what you plan out for a year. Because
Yeah. If you work your way backwards and you structure it out, track those activities and just show up consistently. Get your calendar, show up, start making your chain of
right,
X's and don't break the chain.
yeah,
That's what will motivate you,
right.
not motivation first. That's
So,
the
and
big
one of
nugget.
that I think the key there too, like if anybody wants to do the planning, is to pick a decent sized goal. Like, so write a book would be a decent sized goal. Write 10 books is too much for 12
Right.
weeks, right? Or writing 5 books, or writing a book and getting my DMP in 12 weeks, all that kind of stuff. It's too much. So, but if you're just going to write a book, then what would you need to get done each month? So let's say in month one, all of the chapters need to be laid out. So in month one, if all those chapters need to be laid out and that kind of stuff, then you want to kind of go back and say, okay, well, I'm going to need headlines, I need chapter names, I need to know what the chapters are going to look like, I need to format them. So then you start scheduling those out for the month, and you'll see pretty quickly whether this can get done in 12 weeks or not.
Yep.
And you might have to break it and say, you know what, I'm going to write the first half of the book
Yeah.
in 12 weeks. So, and just honestly, like, again, if you're working 2 or 3 or 4 jobs, however many jobs you're working, don't do more than an hour or two a day.
Yeah.
It'll demotivate you, because then you'll just feel so, and we get that all the time in the courses, like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do. And it's just kind of like,
I'm so tired. I don't have any energy. And I'm like, well, how much are you sleeping? Like 4 hours. Well, no wonder you're tired. Of course
yeah,
you're tired, and why you can't think clearly and have great ideas when you're, like that. So, take that into consideration in your planning, for sure. So maybe the big goal that you wanted in 12 weeks, like you just said, Katie, maybe that needs to be stretched or adjusted. Once you map it out and figure out what it's going to take, you factor in how many hours you realistically have and can commit, and then adjust your schedule to that.
yeah.
You'll still make way more progress if
Oh
you're
my gosh.
tracking and
And
celebrating
Mercedes did
along the
that.
way.
Mercedes did that in our course, and she wrote the book "What the Baby," and she did it in 12 weeks.
Yeah.
And then there were other people in the course that said, "Oh, I'm going to do that too," and they didn't map it out and nothing. They're still like, it's like 6 months later, they're still not
They
writing
still don't even
anything.
have their outline done yet.
Right. Right.
They're
So,
still
and
working
it's
on
not like Mercedes has more time in the day. And she's very busy, and she's a mom, and she's working, and she's doing the business, and she's writing up courses, and she's got a
yeah,
million things going on. And, it's exhausting talking to her. But yeah, it's just a matter of, if you
priority.
had 1 hour a day,
Mhm.
what would you do with it?
Yeah. And now she can use that book as like a way
Oh,
in
yeah.
to
Yeah.
market.
Oh
I
my
mean,
God.
it's a killer marketing tool. Like
Yeah.
that just opens so many doors for her. So again, really smart and strategic on her part to say, you know what, this is going to be a door opener for me, and it's going to move the needle faster once I get that. So I'm going to hardcore be committed and dedicated to this. And I'm going to break it down, get it done, show up every day, whether I'm motivated to or not, whether I'm inspired to write or not. I'm just going to sit down and start working on it and knocking those chapters out. They don't have to be in line of your outline. Like, that's okay. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Just pick a chunk and start working on it. It'll all come together.
Yeah. And I would also say, beware of not having lists. And I'm a little OCD about, I mean, I have lists all over the place. I have lists that monitor my lists that monitor list. And so it's a little ridiculous, but you don't have to be that neurotic.
Spending a lot of time on that. No.
But it helps to have a list. So Sunday, like, this is like grocery shopping for the week. Like, you have to come up with what you're going to do that week. Like, if you
Yes.
don't plan it out, I can't tell you how many days I sat down without a list, and I'm like, oh, I guess I don't really, I'm like, I really don't have anything to do today. And, I would kind of surf the net, and like, I have a million things to do. And I did it last week. I was like, oh yeah, I don't really have anything to do. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I woke up in a cold sweat last night because I have all these things to do. And, they haven't gotten done because I was like goofing off.
Where's my list?
but again, I had some pretty hefty things on my list previously that I just was like, oh, I can't do that today. I don't have time for that. So, and it's a lesson for me because I've lost entire days now because I didn't have that list in place.
Yes. Take that big goal and chunk it down. If you leave
Chunk
it,
it down.
if you leave it, even like a semi big goal, is still like, if, like you said, I love that it's, you put it in tasks that can be done within an hour and no more than 5 a day. Like that's a great rule of thumb. Because
Yeah,
if you put something that's going to take the whole day, you're going to, get partway through and say, oh, well, now I don't have the whole day. I can't really, there's no reason to even start because I'm not going to get finished.
right,
Right. Like, so those are great tips and
right.
strategies.
Yeah, and if you do 5 hours a day, make sure you have the day off. Like that's your day off is those five, and that's not coming home from work and doing 5 hours.
Don't
That's your
start
day
5
off.
hours at 8 p.m.
No, exactly. All right, Jill.
Okay.
So what I think chunk it down is like the way to end this call. Like that's a
Yeah.
great.
I think the summary is, if you have been working backwards and waiting for motivation to hit you in order to do the things you need to do, you need to recognize that you're working a broken strategy, right? And that's never going to get you to where you want to go. You have to do the chunk it down and, break down those goals, show up consistently, get your chain of X's that you don't want to break, and that progress is actually what's going to motivate you to keep going.
Absolutely. All right, Jill, and everybody, thanks for watching. We will see you next week.
All right. See you next Tuesday.